one point she does disengage and grabs a toy from her toy box, but it's easy to distract her away from it and continue the training. As you can see, her attention goes back to me, so we continue with following the lure. Every now and again I'm rewarding from the opposite hand, but I'm mainly rewarding from the lure hand. There is a point in here as well where I do ask for paw or the paw and down because it's a quick and easy reward and it keeps her engaged for the rest of the session. Following on from the previous session, I start with the lure and reward. After doing a couple of release with her confidently doing it, I move on to sit and lure and bring the reward from the opposite hand. She still has a few moments where she'll go to give paw, but she corrects herself a lot quicker than she did the day before and make sure that I don't reward her unless she's doing the desired interaction. I do also run through the basic sequence with her at one point and then continue luring, marking yes and rewarding with the opposite hand. In this session we went over the lure, mark yes and reward from the opposite hand, and for the first half of the session she's very engaged, she's looking straight back at me after we've done the steps. But what you're starting to see is a little bit of jumping up, which could be frustration based because treats aren't coming quick enough. It could also be the fact that I've run through a sequence that we've done quite a lot at this point. So I do run through her basic steps and give her a bit of fuss as a reward, and then go back into the lure, mark yes and reward from the opposite hand. Reflecting back on it, as soon as I did her basic steps again I should have ended the session, but I didn't. I carried on because I wanted to run through it one more time just to make sure that it was perfect before we move on to the next step for the next day. I didn't, and we got a little bit more jumping, so then I called it a day. In this session I transitioned over from using a lure and rewarding afterwards to using a hand signal and rewarding afterwards. I do mess up a few times and it does cause her to jump up a few times. If you watch me when she does this, I pause, I wait, and then I do the step again. To break up the two steps, I do a few find it cues, throwing treats on the floor, letting her sniff it out. Obviously sniffing, chewing and licking are therapeutic for dogs, so if there is any stress that is in her at this moment in time, having that find it cue in there has a little moment of relief so that we can carry on. The session starts with yes and reward, some really quick easy wins where she doesn't have to think an awful lot. I then move on to using the hand signal and rewarding afterwards, mixed with some of the previous steps. There is no jumping in this session and my hand cues are a lot clearer. I'm starting to use the marker word stand when I do a reward. Just like the last session, I wanted to start off a little bit easier with saying yes and rewarding. However, this time I did it from 2 different angles just to make it a little bit different, and then I went into the find it cue before we started doing the follow the hand signal, mark and reward yes. Along with the hand signal, I'm trying to remember to use the mark word stand as well. I don't always use it, mainly just because I forgot, but every time that I do remember I use it, and then reward. As well as using treats as a reward, there is a moment in here where I do give her a bit of a fuss. She turns around and backs into my hands, so I carry on the fuss, but then as soon as she moves away, I give her a second and we carry on with the training. This session started with find it cue and then marking yes and rewarding. As soon as we then went into the actual training, I was using the hand signal and marking with the word stand as her cue. What is most interesting to know about this session, other than how consistent she is with getting the marker cue correct and the fact that I've actually got clear hand signals, to set up the recording I had to move one of her treat boxes and then stand my camera on top of it. She was stood waiting for the training in anticipation of the treats. Arguably this could be a type of classical conditioning as explained by Pavlov, with the box I was standing the phone on as a neutral stimulus and then the treats being what she wanted. By the end of this session, what I'm hoping for is to have her stand without sitting down immediately afterwards. So I'm getting her to stand and I'm rewarding 2 seconds later rather than rewarding immediately. This is a final training day, so what I'm working on here is using the hand signal and marking with the word stand, having her stand for 2 seconds before I reward, and then I'm moving on to adding it into the sequence. We then have our final sequence with stand at the end.